A severe weather warning is in place for northern New South Wales.
The worst flooding on record.
The so-called rain bomb.
It is facing its worst flooding in history. The SES has retracted a call for people to bring their own boats.
Rescues are still underway at Lismore.
This is the sort of community spirit that we've been seeing here.
Like some of the boys, they literally jumped into the water, then tried to swim as fast as they can just to reach the house, started smashing windows and stuff, just trying to see if they could get inside the house and get them out.
When Lismore was submerged in 14 metres of water, a group of Fijian abattoir workers took it upon themselves to retrieve people stranded in the raging floodwaters. Apanisa Madu was one of dozens of volunteers carrying out rescue missions.
The only thing that you can hear is people calling out for help. Like people are just those that are up on the rooftops, people who are actually stuck inside the house.
Weather conditions hampered ADF efforts on Monday, leaving it up to volunteers to ferry hundreds of people to safety on their own kayaks and tinnies. Many in the devastated community are asking, where's the help?
The ADF has now been on constant deployment for aid to civil communities for a couple of years. I mean, they are being put through their paces time and time again. That's not their primary role. We need people to get into these communities immediately.
By Thursday, 170 defence personnel were deployed on floods across the whole of New South Wales, including 4 helicopters servicing the Northern Rivers area. But some locals believe that wasn't enough.
I would say it would have been better if there were actually more.
This morning, New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet acknowledged volunteers have filled critical gaps.
There was advice being provided for people to not take matters into their own hands, but from what I saw over the course of the week, had neighbours not got into boats, then I believe the death toll would have been much higher.
But the Federal Defence Minister has continued to defend the response.
What's going on? Why aren't they there quicker?
Well, Koshi, if you're on the ground, you'd be able to see them. There are 760 people. The images that you've seen of trucks of troops rolling in, we're providing thousands more.
There's now 458 ADF personnel in Lismore providing food and supplies, which Defence says will increase to almost 1,000 by the end of today. The New South Wales Premier has said he's expected 5,000 ADF personnel to be working on recovery across the state.
There needs to be a reset. This is an example of the same sorts of responses being applied time and time again to natural disasters, and we can't keep doing this.
Just over 2 years ago, the east coast of Australia was in the grips of another natural catastrophe, the Black Summer.
There would be all sorts of people who have lived through disasters like this who would be getting a return to PTSD episodes, because you keep asking yourself, why?
Ex-Lismore resident Jan Gilbert lost her home in the Malakuta bushfires, where the Navy was called in to evacuate people to safety. She says there's similarities between the two events.
And I think it's really frustrating for anyone who has lived through one of those events to see the same thing playing out again. It might be a different scenario. It's not fire, it's flood. But it's the same loss, it's the same lack of support, it's the same lack of mitigation.
After the bushfires, a royal commission was called. It made 80 recommendations, with over 50 involving the Commonwealth. It included creating a Central National Agency for Recovery and Resilience, or the NRRA, which the Prime Minister announced last year.
Our federation means we work together on these tasks. And so national coordination and leadership is crucial. We must be consistent in the way we respond and operate regardless of which government agency is involved.
But some, including the long-time member for Bega and now federal Liberal candidate Andrew Constant, say more is needed to cut through the red tape.
I think what's
missing is someone independent of government to cut across bureaucracies and be able to provide that coordination, someone who's given the authority to direct.
Last week, the NRRA defended its decision to not include Lismore as a priority area in its round of flood mitigation funding.
They are not an immediate response organisation, it's still a bureaucratic organisation. It's managing monies that it hasn't spent, and that money needs to get out, but more needs to go to mitigation. There has to be an immediate response at the local level.
With climate scientists warning more disasters will have devastating effects on the country, experts and politicians are calling for greater planning and funding for the next natural disaster.
The more money we can invest up front, the less likely we are going to see this human turmoil and suffering, and that's something which we've got to get right.
The disasters are becoming much more intense and much more frequent. We don't need scientists to tell us that now. We're seeing it with our own eyes.
Jan Gilbert knows it'll be a tough road ahead for victims of this disaster.
Do we not learn anything from any of these catastrophic events? I mean, how many of them do we actually have to have before we start learning anything?
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.